This is a talk with hopefully questions and answers, or at least questions. That's fair enough. Maybe I don't have the answers about politics and emotion and if democracy can include the self. Well, democracy is about making decisions, but how do we make these decisions? Do we decide with emotion or with logic? And what is the right decision? How does the political theory is involved in this? And about democracy, and how does this contradiction affect education for democracy? And what happens to democratic education? Well, these are the central questions of the talk. Please keep in mind that this presentation, it is a theoretical study in order to argument why democratic and how democratic. I will try to be as explicit as possible. And if something doesn't make sense, please hold the thought and we will come back in a few minutes. Well, let's start. Perhaps the greatest lesson that history is teaching us is that the world is not a be, it is a becoming. The world has become to be what it is. It is created, it is constantly being created every single moment, and we participate in that. This creation is neither deterministic nor teleological. It is always an option, like we decide what we want to do with the world. The concept of nation, of state, and democracy, well, to us, it is almost self-evidence. We say, I come from this country. Of course, we have democracy in our society, as it is something normal, as if it has always been this way, or as if it is the only or the best solution we could have. Nevertheless, democracies have been quite fragile. To define how we perceive the content of the term in the modern era, I would like to introduce to you the theory of Castoriadis. Well, he says that the necessary condition for the formation of the society into a political body, it is the consciousness, the realization that they are a political body. This is self-determination, the knowledge that one creates its own laws, that a society is creating its own laws. So this is self-determination, according to Castoriadis, and this is what leads to autonomy. So here I'm going to introduce another term, autonomy and heteronomy. So autonomy from self and law is when I am making the rules. Heteronomy is when someone else is making the rules. So the rules are upon me. And that means that in an heteronomous society or in an heteronomous organization, that means that these the institution of the society has a metaphysical character. I cannot control these laws. I don't decide about the rules. So who brings the rules? It has to be a bigger authority. It has to be an authority that I cannot touch, I cannot reach. This is the relationship also with tradition. In heteronomous society, these rules are divine, are mythical, are inaccessible, and therefore are sacred. To challenge in an heteronomous society, to challenge the law is unthinkable, and therefore it is impossible. In the contrast, the essential democratic society, which is the autonomous society, the awareness that the laws come from the society itself allows them to be challenged and changed if necessary. And this is a creation of a specific political culture, a political imaginary, and this is democracy. Why all this theory? Well, because theory permits reflection. Theory creates this imaginary. If we think about it, we can make it. We can understand it. And we can make it. We can go for it. So I think that it is important for all of us who want to create something new, also to challenge our thoughts and challenge our theories in order to go along with our projects and our actions, go along with also theoretical projects. Institutionalized society, having full consciousness and self-determination, this kind of a society is freed, is liberated from the sacred ties of tradition, of oppression, of whatever used to be unthinkable. Therefore, it elaborates a great quantity of innovative forms, new events, full of meanings that reach the most radical content. In this way, the path is open for human creation, with the term of the deepest meaning, creation, not just as a work, but as a new way of being. Well, this is a little bit difficult because it also bonds with ontology and ontological philosophy, but I just want to make sure that we understand that if we think the unthinkable, we can create something new. But how can we think the unthinkable? Well, we have to challenge our thoughts and gain power. And this is the way to think the unthinkable. The political theory has a very solid argument. Humans are social animals. We are not meant to live on our own. Aristotle used to say that if a man lives alone, is either beast or God. So I don't think that we are beasts nor gods. So let's stick together. So humans are social animals. We construct life with interaction to each other. We don't live alone, we interact. The way we form this interaction characterizes our society and leads to the institutionalization of a regime. So the way that we interact could be democratic, authoritarian, or many other things. So why do we need democracy? Because it is in our nature to be with other people and interact with them, and let's choose the best way to do it. If we abandon the process of making decisions, taking our own decisions, having a consciousness, like a social consciousness of how we form our collective interaction, if we abandon this process in the hands of others, and I mean in people who have more power or more authority because of their position, our principals, our directors, because of age, because of specific knowledge, like people with PhDs or technocrats, or because of ability, people who are more power, or people who have all their parts together, then we are causing to ourselves a self-alienation of the political subject, because we are losing the ability to choose for our own. We are losing our autonomy. We are losing our self-determination. And why is that so important? Because, as we said in the beginning, the world is changing constantly. So if we don't participate in this change, the world is going to change without our actions. Like, we won't be part of that change. But if we take this political autonomy in our hands, then we are the agents who are going to change the world. It's not so utopian, you know. It's actually a very realistic way of thinking. It's like in a relationship. If you don't invest time and action into the relationship, maybe the relationship will go in paths that you don't want to. So you better be there and act on time. Okay. So democracy is a way of organizing collective life. In an autonomous political society, like in ancient Greece, in ancient Athens, individuals as autonomous human beings, but created in a specific political environment with active participation in their democracy, in their political public sphere, and with this collective communication among everything, they were formed into citizens, into full persons. That was very important for ancient Greeks. They thought that the person who participates in democracy is a complete person. The person who does not participate, who is focusing on its own things to do, who is only on the private sphere, the private sector, he was, like, the Greek word was idiot. Like, idiot means private. So who is an idiot? The person who is always on the private sphere. My house, my job, my friends, my money. Okay? So this is what the word means. So public and private sphere. Let's get into that. The importance of this separation between private and public seems to be crucial for the formation of a political society and for the establishment of democracy. We will try to describe an explanation of the profound importance of the separation. Okay, so, and here is the most important part. The formation of collectivity is a natural process of logic. Like, collectivity is logic. In Greek, the word is συλλογικότητα, which is the prefix syn and the synthetic logos, which means syn, together, logos, reason. So logic as a commune, not common logic, but thinking together, in commune, reasoning together. And this is communication, this is collectivity. We understand otherness, like understand, like mentally, intellectual level. We think together, we communicate with the other. And this is how we structure knowledge. So one reaches self-knowledge and knowledge of the other, of the otherness, when he or she distance the self from emotions. So collective self-awareness, awareness of otherness, intellectual distance from the emotions. Okay. So now, in order to illuminate the private sphere, Castoriadis is attaching the construction of the person with desire. Like, how do we become a person? Well, we desire something. So what does he say? He says that I want something. This action creates myself, like the concept that it is me. It constructs the outside reality, the object of my desire, okay? And also, excuse me, it constructs otherness. It is me who desires that object, not someone else. So through desire, we understand who we are, who the other is, and what the object is. Okay, so this is sociology and psychoanalysis. We moved from ontological philosophy to the construction of the self in psychoanalysis. So it can define the world, the external world, as a lack of the object of desire, and the subject soul attributes pleasure. So I see you, Leslie, give me feedback, guys. Understandable, or am I talking my own words?
It's very philosophical, but I'm doing my best to translate it into very bad German.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, we're very intrigued and interested, so continue.
Okay, thank you. So the object of pleasure, the object of desire, constitutes the subject, the basis of desire, and defines otherness. What is all that? This is emotion. Okay. Here I want to add, this is what Castoriadis said. So now I want to add what Arendt says. Arendt, she places the conception of the thing, therefore the reception of reality, in the lack of objective relationship with others. Like she says that there is no way that we can relate to others in a clear, objective way. We cannot relate to another person and that be so objective as the fact, for example, that I am holding a glass now. So this is objective. Am I holding a glass? Yes, definitely, yes. Of course I'm holding a glass. I mean, here is the glass. I can hear it, I can see it, I can feel it. So I am holding a glass. But do I relate with my friends? Yeah, but how do I know that? There's so many factors, so many things that intervene. And what is the type of relationship? So it's not really objective. Therefore, there is an essential loneliness in people. Okay. So as we see now, desire or loneliness, social interaction, All these are related to the emotion. It is never, ever possible to completely exclude emotion from any human process. We cannot exclude emotion. We are constructed by emotion. In emotion is where human communication lies. But before we have seen that in the collective, there is no emotion. So is this a contradiction? What is happening? Well, democracy must invent a transcendence of this contradiction between emotional relativism and clarity of collective communication. And not just to find this transcendence of contradiction, but also to allow people generally, like logic and emotion, to allow people participate in the public sphere. Because democracy is realized in the public sphere. And how can we overcome this antinomy? Well, Arendt, she has a thing to say here. She has made a study about councils. And she examined the political events. What is a political event? Is when normality stops. We have an event which is something really important that breaks this normality, and new possibilities emerge, like new realities. So what is a political event? For example, a revolution. Something breaks the normality, and so something breaks the normality and new possibilities emerge. And Arendt, she pointed out that after every revolution, we had a council. Like in every single historical case, people decided to create a council. Revolutionary councils are the nucleus of the emerging democratic collectives, and they never tried to avoid the emotional burden of people involved in their proceedings. They didn't try to handle and relieve and make it disappear. On the contrary, they tried to urge their perspective body and put it into public consultation and feed the emotion, feed it, and give it more characteristics and make it political. What does that mean? It means that no not with psychological aspects, but with political processes, infusing emotional richness with respect and affection, and avoid deviation in overflow of passions. So Arendt points that revolutions become out of the love of freedom and became to claim the happiness of the people, incorporating personal desires in the collective struggle. So the personal desire is incorporated in the collective struggle. So the desire, emotion, is incorporated in the collective regional. For her thought, happiness, solidarity, compassion are parts of her political analysis, also kindness and forgiveness. In fact, she proposes a new way of coexisting at the level of conscious institution. Like, there is a new way of coexisting in this radical democracy. And this way is compatible with the freedom of the individual and at the same time, a constructive way for political creation and democratic inclusion. And what about education? Here I want to add a little bit of Savater, who is Hispanohablante, Spanish-speaking scholar. He says that the basic idea that current education must preserve and promote is democratic universality, which is based on freedom and autonomy. According to Savater, education is the place where critical thinking can be exercised, and in education we should my God, I'm confusing Spanish with English now. It's the marginalization of the antisocial.
Marginalize.
Okay, thank you. Marginalize the antisocial, such as racism, terrorism, nationalism, sexism, and all these other things. So he says that the schools is where the citizens cross with otherness and with social diversity. And in education, one exercises the coexistence skills. Like, we need to live together. We said that in the beginning. We have to live together. It's in our nature. So let's make it happen the most productive and peaceful way that we can. And this is a democratic way. For Savater, freedom is not liberty. It's not understood in a liberal sense. He says, in his own words, how to admit without suspicion or scandal that the way to become free and autonomous passes through a series of instructive constraints through a habitation to various forms of obedience. The answer lies in the freedom that we are talking is not an ontological condition, but an achievement. So freedom is an achievement of our social integration. This is what Hegel also used to say, being free is nothing, becoming free is everything. We don't start for freedom, we arrive at freedom. So what happens in the private sphere? Is it public? No, it is not, but it is political. Private sphere, where emotions are, it is not public, but yes, of course it is political. A great example is feminism, is domestic violence. Domestic violence is something that happens literally inside our homes, behind closed doors, definitely on the private sector. But is it a private matter? No, it is political. Second point, people are mind and body, are intellect and emotion. Can we have both? Can both participate in an assembly where we have to talk and discuss and make a choice? Where we have to use a reason and arguments to convince the other person? Yes, of course. There's no other way to do it. We are made out of our desires. We carry our desires wherever we go. We cannot leave them behind. A teacher cannot say to the students, well, here we are all just to learn history. Whatever your desires and your occupations or whatever you have, well, leave it outside of the class. No, it's not gonna happen. Leave it outside of the classroom. I mean, can I cut myself in two? Democratic processes like assemblies, like councils, are the forms who can include both, who can include the self. But how do they include the self? They transform, they conceptualize, and they take personal experience and they make it a social phenomenon. So domestic violence could be my personal experience, but when it goes through democracy, it is not a private matter anymore. It is a social phenomenon. And the person in a democratic structure can express and can be included with everything that he or she is, can be included with all the identities, therefore with all the desires that carries. So what is a democracy? It is working together, wanting together, achieving freedom together. Why together? Well, first of all, there's no other way to live. We can only live together. And this ensemble, this being together, makes us more rich. Diversity makes us rich. And let me conclude my epilogue with a quote from Castoriadis. I want the other to be free because my freedom begins where the other's freedom begins. And because on my own, I can be at best virtuous in misery. Thank you all for your time. Please feel free to ask or question, or just don't expect answers. Oh, thank you, Charlie, for the recommendation. This is a book?
Yes. Hello, everybody. It's so beautiful to see you again. My dear American, so good to see you there. Yes, it's so interesting what you are saying, how we need to find the space for the self, but being part of the community. And this is one of the things you were speaking about, social psychology, sociology. One of the things in anthropology, which is really clear, is how we build our identity. It's not only who we are, but also who we are not. The reflection on diversity is so rich, is so important in a democratic environment, learning environment, that we respect the individuality, not individualism, and individuality of each person, but at the same time we build on this collective us, right? On us pulling towards somewhere, you know, having shared goals and agreements. It was really inspirational. Thank you very much, Christiana. We will continue the conversation in Athens.
Yes, of course. I look forward to that. I know, I left you all speechless, right?
No, hello, Mirto again. I have this question for the past year and a half. What would Castoriadis think about the COVID measures?
excuse me, about what?
The COVID measures imposed on the
COVID.
whole
Oh,
social distancing and
yeah.
lockdowns and staying at home alone.
Okay. Castoriadis, he thinks that the person is constructed in the relationship. Balbar, another philosopher, has extended this idea, and he has proposed this term of trans-individuality and inter-individuality, which means that we are who we are because of our relationships, and we construct the self not inside us, but in the space in between others. So it is not us, like in the center, and the others, and others, and others. No. That's not it. We are in the space in between. This is what the individual is, how it's constructed. So in that sense, social distancing could be the origin of, let's say, not full construction of the self.
Can I just contribute with a reflection? What we have seen is that the more kids were forced to be, especially speaking about young people, were forced to be at home, to follow the routine of the lesson, the lecture, 5, 6, 7 different lectures every day, with no social contact with others, was affecting them and is affecting them. And this should be like a heads up situation in which we consider much more seriously the importance of social relationships in learning environments. In our case, for instance, we open a cafe, like some sort of open space where the kids could come and we would just speak, what did you have for breakfast? And this was building on their feeling that I'm not alone on this. There are many other people on this, right? The emotions at the center of being isolated, but being accompanied.
Yes, I mean, we are social animals. We don't have a choice to that. Yes, Leslie?
Okay, I don't quite know how to ask the question yet, but I've noticed that like in EUDEC, for example, or in my experience in the last couple of years at our school, that this element of the self and emotion is often something that that is felt really intensely, but doesn't really have a space in the democratic structure, and that we often try to use democracy to kind of to take the place of relationships. And I'm not quite sure how to make the question, but a lot of often during your talk today, I was thinking like it was a refreshing sense of, I think we try to like get rid of difficult emotional relationships and conflicts just with structures and procedures. And we just wish that they would disappear. But hearing you talk made me think that maybe they should be more of a presence, in the democracy, and that they're meant to be more present in the democracy. And yeah, but I'm not quite sure what question, but maybe was this kind of the what kind of brought you to like partially to this question, this dynamic, I mean, in a democratic community?
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you for that, for sharing that.
Christiana, Leslie asked you if this is something that played a role in the way that you're thinking about this?
Oh, I thought that she stated that. Because yes, I thought it was more like a statement that this is it. Yes, I also see that many times we are trying to overcome awkwardness with structure. And this is not just in democratic schools, this is not just in our relationships, this is also in the state. For example, when we have a person at risk, we answer with structure when we should have answered with interaction, like inside the community. Instead of that, what do? We push the person into a structure, so the person never gets what really needs, which is affection. But we're trying to be fair and just when what we have to do is be with compassion. So sometimes instead of having compassion, we're trying to give justice. It's awkward, you know. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to give compassion. So we're trying to give justice. I'm not saying that we shouldn't give justice. Yes, but first, let's be more close, like emotionally close to the others, and then we will see justice with different perspective.
Thank you. Would it be possible to get your presentation as a PDF?
Yeah, the PowerPoint. Yes, of course.
I have a question. In my understanding, your thoughts and emotions on radical democracy are very much about evolving democracy. And I put John Dewey's a quote by John Dewey also in the chat. He says, democracy has to be born anew every generation, and education is its midwife. And I feel that so many of the obstacles that we're facing also as EUDEC are because democracy, the definition of democracy is not really evolving. So when you start your presentation with a definition of democracy based on how it was defined in ancient Greece, where it's about the people having the power, and who are the people? The people are rich white men. I get very confused.
Okay. I'm not talking about the citizenship in ancient Greece. I'm talking about the pattern, like two different types of society. The autonomous society is the society that creates the laws, and the heteronymous society is the society that someone else is creating the laws for the society. So who is part of the society? This is another question. This is another topic. This is another talk. For example, kids are part of the society. At what age? Women are part of the society. Like, is citizenship linked with ability, age, language, religion? Yes, of course. Of course. We are not living in utopia. We are living in a very oppressive regime. This is not democracy in its full extension. This is what we have done so far. So it's like we need to think what we want to create, not because we will do it now, but because it can show us which path we should walk. So if we have in mind of what we want, we can walk that path towards that way. But we need constantly to question, is this what we want? Is this the correct path? Is there any change that we have to make? And up to now, there have been so many changes, like social changes, and I'm sure that there are many more to come. But will these changes make us go forward to our path or backwards? This depends on our participation. If we participate, if we engage ourselves in this process, and if we walk the path, then we will provoke the changes. So it will go forward. But if we don't participate, if we decide not to be part of it, it will go backwards. Of course, it's not linear, but you're getting what I mean, right? And this is why I am talking about education. Because education speaks about the future. In a way. Okay, well, don't overthink it. If someone wants to say something, we only have a few minutes left.
I don't know if nobody's saying nothing. I have to admit I had to attend my child, and I'm so saturated from the whole meetings that I'm almost not able to have new information in my head. But I just were there like the first 10 minutes of your talk, and I think this perspective that you're putting up, that we are social animals, this is something that that we are animals, not even going into the social, that we are animals. And this ethological perspective is something I miss a lot in pedagogical discussions. And this is a view, I don't know if you heard about human ethology. Ethology is the science of the behavior. Many people don't, I know you in Greece know that, but many people, and I talked to a lot of teachers and a lot of pedagogues, and I asked them, do you know ethology? And many didn't even know that this exists. And I think this is something to realize, that we are animals, and we have like a heritage, a biological heritage on our shoulders. This is, for example, very interesting in the gender discussion, which some people don't like to hear. For example, that we have this biological program, and then the whole discussion starts: what is culture, what is biology, how culture is influenced by biology, and so on. But I think this is a very relevant perspective, and we should more and more take conscious of and include in our discussions. For example, it helps a lot to know how already chimpanzees behave when they have to leave the mother to the next baby and stuff like this. And well, this is so I think it's very important to have these fundamental perspectives and to take conscious of this very basic levels as you did. Sorry that I missed so much and maybe I'm repeating stupid stuff, but I think this is something very important. And human ethology, for example, they say the father of human ethology was Irenaeus Eibelsfeld. This is a very funny German name, Irenaeus Eibelsfeld. He was like a pupil of Konrad Lorenz, and he wrote several books. One of them, it's back in the 60s or 70s. It's called Love and Hate, and it studies or it analyzes the mechanisms which create bonding, which make us like get close to each other, which like make the social connection, which is so important for survival, but also the mechanisms which create distance, which are also important for surviving, to have like my own territory. So this having these two main energies, the one which connects us and the one which puts us apart, love and hate. And this is a very, very interesting book about this mechanisms, biological programs already in animal behavior and still to observe in us, the humans. So I think this perspective is very important to be more and more included in our psychological and pedagogical discussions. Thank you. And sorry if I repeated obvious things you already talked about.
Okay, so let's bye Leslie. Let's put an end to this very interesting talk. It was my talk. No, I honestly think that it's always very interesting when we try to think, to conceptualize, to challenge what we know. I think it is important to never rest. Theory is not something boring. Theory is restless. Theory is questioning, is researching, is thinking the unthinkable. So thank you all for being here, for participating. Thank you for your questions. And well, theory is good. Don't get bored. Bye.